Hello everybody and welcome back to the Blossom Review. How are you? Today we are talking about Beyond the Goodbye, which was released last Thursday on Netflix. So Beyond the Goodbye is Netflix's latest attempt at a J-drama and a show that I had been looking forward to watching for a really long time. So, two disclaimers before we start. One, spoiler alert. I will definitely be spoiling you, so if you don't want any spoilers, stop now. And two, I want to say that I love the creative team behind this show and I love the cast. I love Sakaguchi Kentaro, Arimura Kasumi, Toma. I love all of them very much. But I must confess that Beyond Goodbye did not live up to my expectations. And I'm here to tell you why. I'm here to explain to you why I think that Beyond Goodbye wasn't what it could have been. Now, if you loved the show, please write a comment and tell me why you loved it. Tell me why you didn't love it, if maybe you didn't love it. Tell me, well, you know, stay with me, hear me out. And then maybe try to tell me, maybe you saw something in the story that I didn't. So yeah, stick around while we talk about Beyond Goodbye today. So Beyond Goodbye, I said that I love the creative team behind it because the director and the writer, they also worked together on NHK's Hyoko. Hyoko is one of my favorite Asadoras ever. I absolutely love Hyoko. So I had really high expectations for Beyond Goodbye because I was familiar with the creative team behind it. Beyond Goodbye is the story of Saeko, played by Arimura Kasumi. Saeko is a young woman who is now living in profound grief after losing her fiancé, Yusuke, played by Toma, in a tragic accident. A few months after the accident, she meets Naruse, played by Sakaguchi Kentaro. Naruse reminds her of Yusuke quite a bit. And Naruse feels strangely attached to Saeko as well. So the two of them, this is the journey. Beyond Goodbye is this journey of these two people that are going through their own grieving processes. And they try to understand why they feel so uncannily comfortable around the other. Now, Beyond Goodbye was marketed by Netflix as a romantic drama. So I expected to be, and I was ready to be devastated by this really tragic love story. But after watching the first 2 or 3 episodes, I could hear the narrator of 500 Days of Summer in my head. I don't know if you guys remember, but 500 Days of Summer starts with a narration. And they say, this is a story of boy meets girl, but you should know upfront, this is not a love story. Because I realized that Beyond Goodbye was not a romantic drama. Beyond Goodbye was a life drama with a healthy dose of fantasy, and a really good one at that. And I was really invested in the show. I think the first few episodes, they are really good. But then the show sort of loses track of its objective. And I think the question that remains at the end of the show is, what is the point that Beyond Goodbye was trying to make? I don't know. The objective of the show is not really clear. Unfortunately, the show sort of falls apart right at the end, pretty much. So I think up until episode 6, halfway through episode 6, it was good. It was good. And then halfway through episode 6, the plot just falls apart. Now, let me tell you why. So, the first 5.5 episodes of Beyond Goodbye, they are about grief. The characters in Beyond Goodbye, most of them, are all going through their own processes or their own grieving processes. So they are all mourning the loss of someone or something. And the show reminds us that grief is a very particular kind of heartbreak, and one that everybody processes differently. So there is no set route that you can have that everybody can follow to sort of learn how to live with grief. Both Saeko, so Saeko and Naruse, they are the protagonists of this story pretty much. Both Saeko and Naruse, they are going through their own processes or their own grieving processes. So Saeko is mourning the loss of her fiance, and then suddenly she meets this guy who reminds her of Yusuke, of her fiance, and this guy seems to carry a little bit of his spirit. So he's sort of Naruse is keeping Yosuke's spirit alive in a way. Saeko decides to spend time with him in hopes of soothing her own pain. Meanwhile, Naruse is mourning the loss of a life that he never got to live because of his disease. So Naruse grew up with heart problems, and so that stopped him from living a life that he deemed to be normal. So Naruse appreciates the memories that he receives from the transplant, because technically speaking, he receives a heart transplant from Yusuke, and this heart comes with Yusuke's memories, okay, and some of his emotions, let's say. He appreciates these memories that he receives because it sort of helps him come to terms with a life that he didn't live, and also prepares him for this new life that he's about to live after the transplant. The relationship, the dynamic between Saeko and Naruse, which is this very gentle, very lovely, very unique bond of companionship that they develop between, Saeko and Naruse. This relationship allows Saeko to honor and appreciate and learn more about her fiance, and allows Naruse to have a taste of the spontaneity of a life without the constraints of his disease. So pretty much the show focuses, especially in the first few episodes, the show focuses on this journey. What is important to highlight here is that other characters in the story, they are also going through their own grieving processes. So Saeko's grieving process is helped by the lovely Hiro, played by Miura Tomokazu. Hiro is an old man who lives in Hawaii. He grows coffee plants, and he lost his wife a few years ago. So Hiro understands Saeko because he's been there himself. So he is wonderful to see how Hiro supports Saeko and helps Saeko in this journey. He understands that she needs time, she needs a space, that even though she's smiling and she looks okay, maybe deep down inside she's not okay yet. So it's really nice to see this supportive relationship between Saeko and Hiro, because of course it's been just a few months since Yusuke's passing. So Saeko's grief is too fresh to impart any wisdom. But Hiro, his wife died years ago, so he's at a completely different stage of his grieving process, and he's in a position in which he can advise, let's say, Saeko. Now, Saeko also has Kengo. So Kengo is played by Okuno Eita. Kengo was Yusuke's childhood friend. And so you see that Kengo is mourning the same person as Saeko, but his grieving process is completely different from Saeko. Saeko is very open. She talks to him quite a bit, and she shares her, let's say, her suffering quite openly. But Kengo doesn't. Kengo doesn't really share very much. He cries next to Saeko, but never alongside her, never together, because of a lot of reasons. So I think the relationship between Kengo and Saeko illustrate to the audience how, you know, grief takes different shapes, and everybody reacts to loss differently. So you see that Kengo refuses to meet Naruse, because even though Naruse is now similar to Yosuke, they will never be the same person. You know, Kengo is very, you know, his grieving process is completely different from Saeko's. Even though Kengo doesn't really open up to Saeko, they do support each other quite a bit in this journey. And it's lovely to see that. What makes me sad about Kengo is that, so throughout the entire show, the show sort of hints that Kengo was actually in love with Yusuke. And in episode 8, so the last episode, they confirm this fact with this 2-line dialogue. And this could have been such a superb subplot to explore grief, to explore, you know, the loss of Yusuke. And it's just, I feel like if the show had focused on the theme of grief, they could have explored this subplot and maybe given Kengo a little bit more to do in this story. And I think it would have been fantastic. But unfortunately, well, that didn't work. Now, on the other hand, Naruse. Naruse is completely alone. Naruse, you know, if you think about it, the guy spent his entire life sick, and then goes through a heart transplant, which is a really big thing. But not only that, he's now at the door of the life of the life that he's always dreamed of living. A life in which he can run with children, he can skip work to travel, he can have an argument with his wife Miki, played by Nakamura Yuri. So he's at the door of this brand new life, and he's excited. So after the transplant, of course, he gains this energy and vivacity that he had never had. But most importantly, this transplant came with memories and flashbacks of a life that he never lived. So, of course, he's confused, he's lost. It's only natural. So, Naruse, you don't really see any family or friends around Naruse, so he doesn't have anybody that he can rely on. And at first, his relationship with Miki, his wife, is seen in a very positive light. So you see that Miki is very supportive, is very caring at first, and you imagine that they have a healthy relationship. But then, when he tries to share this experience, this completely new experience of having memories that are not his and learning where his heart came from, his new heart came from, and you know, about Saeko and everything, when he tries to share this experience with Miki, he's harshly shunned. Miki doesn't want to have any part in his grief, in his confusion, in his curiosity. And that's really sad to watch. So he's completely isolated, let's say. So much so that he finds his way to Kengo's coffee shop, and he breaks down in front of Kengo. A marvelously performed scene by Sakaguchi. Sakaguchi was incredible. It's a scene that I can't forget because it was amazing. So he breaks down in front of Kengo because he's lost, like he feels things that he can't explain. So he's sort of like two people at once, but he can't share this process with anybody. And then, of course, Saeko also learns that his heart is, you know, the heart living inside Naruse is Yusuke's heart. So she's the one who supports him in this journey. She's the only one willing to join him, to engage in this process of discovery with Naruse. And then Saeko and Naruse, they start learning more about Yusuke. So it's a process of discovery, you know, for Saeko. Saeko is learning more about Yusuke. And I feel that for Naruse, it was a process of discovery of life, a life that he never got to live. So throughout this process, Saeko and Naruse's relationship was portrayed more as a nuanced friendship than a romance. And for a show that seemed to be focusing on exploring grief, this is exactly what the show needed. And then for the most of the show, it feels like Miki seems to be the only one reading too much into everything. And Miki sort of becomes this controlling and obsessive wife. And it's sort of Miki and her attitude towards this entire situation. It contrasts with the sincerity and the gentleness of the relationship between Naruse and Saeko. The singularity of this bond, because it's a very unique bond between Naruse and Saeko, right? I thought it was defended during the scene in which Miki goes to the train station to confront Saeko. And Miki's terrible in that scene. Like, she offends and belittles Saeko's grief for no good reason. But then Saeko responds in a very mature way, and she says, look, the relationship that we have is not what you imagine it to be. And but from there on, that scene, I was very, very happy with that scene. But at the same time, that scene was sort of a turning point for Beyond Goodbye. So from there on, Beyond Goodbye decides to become a romantic melodrama. And the plot slowly falls apart. And then, you know, lots of things start to happen that don't really make sense. So right after that scene in which Saeko pretty much tells Miki, look, our relationship is not what you think it is, they kiss. Like, it pretty much goes against everything that happened in the 5 episodes before. So from a very awkward kiss to a random bear encounter, can somebody explain what the point was with that bear scene? Guys, please write in the comments, explain to me what was the point in that bear sequence. I don't know. So from a very awkward kiss to this random bear encounter, the plot tries to go everywhere without really going anywhere. So just 10-15 minutes before episode 7, in a show of 8 episodes, Saeko and Naruse are presented as this romantic couple who were fated to be apart. And then Naruse's grief becomes even stronger because he finds out that he's actually dying, but his grieving process is never developed, is never really talked about. And then Miki refuses to communicate with her husband and continues to target her grief at Saeko, you know, offending and blaming and shaming her non-stop. And then Naruse and Saeko never really get to have an affair, but then they are not just friends either anymore. And then, what makes me so sad is that then Naruse dies at the end in the most anticlimactic scene ever. And he's not even mentioned in the last 10 minutes of the last episode. As if he was just a plot device for Saeko's grief throughout this entire show, instead of being the male protagonist that he was supposed to be. And weirdly enough, then Miki and Saeko are sort of friends at the end, while Miki continues to say that Saeko should be apologetic towards her, and then they just laugh it off as if nothing happened. So what was the point here? Was this supposed to be a story about grief? Was this supposed to be a tragic love story? what were they trying to say? Because at the end, then, all the things that they introduce halfway through episode 6, they're not really developed. You know, there isn't a proper setup before, and there isn't enough, you know, development after to make those plot lines actually hold water. So it's very sad. Very, very sad. I was really sad because I expected a lot from this show. So, since we're talking about female characters, I have another quick note to make, and that's something that annoyed me a lot in the show, is what happened with the female characters in Beyond Goodbye. Like, you only really have 2 prominent female characters in the show, Saeko and Miki. So Saeko is shown as this, you know, often mature, very sincere, very determined woman. It's actually quite nice to watch Saeko. I thought she was a very good female protagonist. And then you have Miki that deteriorates from being a very caring and loving wife to this petty, self-centered, cruel woman. She never really talks to her husband. She ignores him every single time that he tries to communicate, you know, to establish a line of communication between them. And then you have Saeko, who from the very beginning made it very clear that she didn't want to interfere in their marriage. She didn't want to interfere in his, you know, happiness. And then Miki just decides to constantly blame Saeko for a problem so that never really existed in the first place. So she's constantly blaming this woman she never met before, who has just lost her fiancé, for a problem that never even existed in the first place. So here we have a trope that I noticed shows up a lot in scripts written by men, is women turning against women for no reason whatsoever. So, you know, Miki is constantly hurting Saeko, is constantly offending her for no good reason, and then at the end they just, you know, nothing happened, it's fine. Like, no. What makes me sad is that instead you could have had a wife that was actively involved from the very beginning. She, you know, she could have been part of this entire journey. They could have even added, you know, Kengo to the story, so it would have been the 4 of them. And, you know, they could have shared this process of mourning, this process of grief together. And then after Naruse's passing, Saeko would become to Miki what a hero has always been for her, you know. You know, a person that can give you support, that can understand what you're going through. They could have had a friendship there. And of course, you know, Saeko could go back to Japan once a year to see her as friends. But no, instead we have this sort of petty wife that became an antagonist for no good reason. And so is it because it's entertaining to have a spiteful woman in the story? Like, no, it's not. So I was really, yeah, it made me really sad. Now, to the good things before we finish. Performances. Sakaguchi Kentaro he shines in Beyond Goodbye. You know, he portrays hopelessness and optimism with the same intensity, you know, and you see that he is lost and he's hurt and he's curious and he's desperate in a sense. And you know, Sakaguchi is just so charismatic when portraying all of these different emotions. And he makes us root for Naruse. And well, yeah, so he's wonderful. He's absolutely wonderful. Arimura Kasumi was also great. She delivered a nuanced performance of this young woman trying to figure out what grief is and how to live with it. So this is actually, Beyond Goodbye is the 4th project that Sakaguchi and Arimura worked together after Love That Makes You Cry, Naratage, and Soshite Ikiru. So maybe you know, if you combine the experience that they have together and the script, you notice that the chemistry that they have in the show is not really romantic. It's more like a companionship of sorts, a friendship. Iko Tatoma was great as well, playing this sort of flamboyant and very, very cheerful, very happy, very lively man, but with a tinge of sorrow. You know, his performance sort of, it shows a man who seems to be very happy now, maybe because he's learned to live with his sadness. So it's very, very nice to watch Ikuta. He's fantastic in the show as well. And he and Arimura, they have this sort of, they portray this love story with the sentimentality required. You notice that the chemistry that they have is this sort of, it's not like, oh my God, but it's a chemistry of a relationship that it died before it could even begin, in a sense, you know, before it fully blossoms. Unfortunately, Yusuke dies. So it's a very particular relationship that they have. But the entire cast is fantastic. The entire cast is marvelous, truly. But I think my favorite thing is Kurosaki Hiroshi. Kurosaki Hiroshi is the director, and his cinematography is breathtaking. So Kurosaki decided to film Beyond Goodbye in mostly wide and medium shots, because I feel that he wanted to emphasize the relationships between the characters. He wanted to emphasize their encounters and farewells, their arrivals and departures. So I feel that's why he used so many wide and medium shots. Close-ups are few and far between and only used really to emphasize specific expressions, important expressions and important details in the story. So wide shots also help him highlight the beauty of the environment. It's just so beautiful. The beauty of the environment, but also the passing of the seasons as well. So it's such a beautiful show to watch, to look at. And I think also something that is curious about this entire thing is that he decided, despite the difficult topic, he decided to portray, you know, the story of Beyond Goodbye in very vivid, warm colors. And he uses a lot of light and shadows to sort of guide your attention, but also give this sort of magical aura to the show. I think emphasizing this more fantastical element of the show. So should you watch Beyond Goodbye? Unfortunately, Beyond Goodbye starts as a very good life drama that loses track of its objective, and the script fails to tell a cohesive story with well-developed characters, well-developed plot. The cast is incredible, the score is incredible, the cinematography is incredible, but unfortunately the script doesn't really put it all together. Now, if you are a Sakaguchi fan or Arimura, you are a fan of Arimura's or Ikuta's, you know, you might find enough redeeming features in the show to justify your time, but it's very difficult. I mean, maybe if you watch Beyond Goodbye, you will see something that I didn't, and maybe you will fall in love with it. But unfortunately, that didn't happen in my case. So I'm not sure if me personally, I would recommend it. But I think when it comes to books and movies and TV shows, I think it's very personal, you know. We all have different perspectives and things. So yeah, please tell me in the comments what you thought of Beyond Goodbye. Maybe explain things that maybe I didn't understand. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you guys. Now, so yesterday on the Blossom Review, we posted this review in article format. So maybe you guys, you know, you would rather read my complaints instead of hear me complain for half an hour. Next week we are talking about new shows that are coming out in December, so make sure to stop by the Blossom Review next Wednesday. And next Thursday, because we've been talking a lot about TV in the past few weeks, next Thursday we'll be talking about literature a little bit, even because next Friday, the 29th of November, The Trunk is coming to Netflix. Let's hope. So I've been reading The Trunk, so the original novel. So we'll be talking about it a little bit next Thursday. So make sure to stop by the Blossom Review. Make sure to stop by next Thursday. And well, I hope you liked the video. I know it wasn't the most positive of videos, but I hope you liked the video and you subscribe. And make sure to leave in the comments, make sure to write in the comments what you thought of Beyond Goodbye. So I hope you have a fantastic day today. Stay safe, take care of yourself, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you next week. Bye, thank you so much.